Failure. It haunts us, doesn't it? Like a recurring nightmare that jolts us awake, leaving us breathless and terrified. It's that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, the echo of doubt in your mind, the relentless whisper that you weren't good enough. But let me ask you something. What if those nightmares, those moments of failure, aren't here to torment you? What if they're here to teach you, to forge you into something stronger, something unbreakable? What if, instead of fearing the nightmare, you leaned into it? Let's talk about turning your darkest failures into your greatest strengths. Failure is not just an experience, it's a paradox. On one hand, it feels devastating. It can knock the air out of your lungs and leave you questioning everything you once believed about yourself. On the other hand, failure is the crucible in which greatness is forged. Think about it. Can you name one person, one figure in history, who achieved greatness without stumbling along the way? Every fall is a chance to rise stronger. Let's start by dissecting the nightmare. Picture the failure that haunts you the most. Maybe it's a personal dream you worked tirelessly for, only to watch it crumble. Or maybe it's a betrayal by a friend, a colleague, or even yourself. The details may vary, but the essence is the same. It feels like a shadow that follows you everywhere, doesn't it? It whispers in your ear, reminding you of everything that went wrong. But here's the truth. That shadow isn't there to haunt you. It's there to guide you. Shadows exist because of light. And if there's a shadow following you, that means there's a light source somewhere near. The question is, are you willing to find it? You see, failure is like a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that you are too scared to face. It shows you your weaknesses, your fears, your doubts. But it also shows you something else, your potential. It shows you what you're capable of when you refuse to give up. Now let's get personal. When was the last time you truly failed? Not a minor setback, but a gut-wrenching, soul-crushing failure that left you questioning your worth. Think about it. What did it teach you? Did it make you more cautious, more careful? Or did it ignite a fire within you to prove everyone, including yourself, wrong? Failures are not obstacles. They're stepping stones, but only if you're willing to see them that way. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. The path is steep, treacherous, and filled with pitfalls. Every time you stumble, it feels like the mountain is mocking you. But each stumble teaches you something valuable. How to navigate the terrain, how to find your footing, how to keep going even when every muscle in your body is screaming at you to stop. That's what failure does. It doesn't stop you. It prepares you. Every time you fail, you're being given an opportunity to grow, to adapt, to become something greater. Now let me ask you this. What's your relationship with failure? Do you fear it? Avoid it? Pretend it doesn't exist? Or do you face it head on, knowing that every failure is a lesson in disguise? If you're like most people, you probably fear failure. And that's okay. Fear is natural. It's a survival mechanism that keeps us safe. But here's the thing, fear can also be paralyzing. It can stop you from taking risks, from chasing your dreams, from living your life to the fullest. So how do you overcome that fear? By changing the way you see failure. Instead of seeing it as a monster that's out to get you, see it as a mentor that's here to teach you. Instead of running from it, lean into it. Remember, failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. You cannot succeed without failing first. It's like learning to walk. When you were a baby, you didn't just stand up and start running. You fell. over and over again. But every time you fell, you got back up. And eventually, you learned to walk. Let's make a pact right now. The next time failure comes knocking, we won't run. We won't hide. We'll face it, learn from it, and use it to become the best versions of ourselves. Because that's what life is all about. Growing, evolving, and becoming unstoppable. And when you finally reach the top of that mountain, you'll look back and realize those failures weren't obstacles. They were the steps that got you there. Failure is not your enemy. It's your ally. Embrace it. Learn from it. And let it make you stronger. Because the nightmares that haunt you are also the ones that shape you. They're the ones that make you who you are. And who you are is someone capable of achieving greatness. Failure is not just a single event. It's a process. It's a cycle that starts with a fall, but can end with a rise, if you let it. Have you ever stopped to think about the emotions that failure stirs within you? The disappointment, the frustration, the anger. What if I told you these feelings are tools? Tools designed to push you into action. Think about the last time you failed. How did it feel? Did it feel like the ground beneath you had vanished? Like you were free falling into a dark abyss with no bottom in sight? Now, let me ask you this. What did you do next? Did you stay in that free fall? Or did you start climbing back up? Every failure comes with two choices. You can let it define you, or you can let it refine you. The difference between these two lies in your perspective. Let's reflect for a moment. Why do you think failure feels so personal? Why does it sting in ways that physical pain never could? The answer lies in the expectations we place on ourselves. We set the bar high, often impossibly high, because we want to prove to the world and to ourselves that we're capable, that we're worthy. But here's the paradox. Failure doesn't diminish your worth. In fact, it enhances it. How? Because failure is proof that you dared to try, that you put yourself out there, that you took a risk. And isn't that what life is all about? Taking risks, stepping out of your comfort zone. Let's take a step further. Failure isn't just about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to it. When life knocks you down, it's easy to stay there, to wallow in self-pity, to let the weight of your mistakes keep you grounded. But every second you spend on the ground is a second you could spend getting back up. Let me tell you a story. It's about a young artist who poured their heart and soul into their work, only to have it rejected over and over again. They could have given up, could have let the rejections define their future. But they didn't. They kept creating, kept pushing, kept believing. That artist? Vincent van Gogh. Today, his paintings are celebrated around the world. What's the lesson here? Perseverance in the face of failure can lead to greatness. It's not about how many times you fail. It's about how many times you get back up. So, how do we get back up? It starts with reframing the way we see failure. Instead of viewing it as an end, we must see it as a beginning, a chance to start fresh, to try again, to do better. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this failure? What did it teach me about myself, about my strengths, about my weaknesses? These questions are the key to turning failure into growth. And let's not forget the importance of resilience. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward. It's about taking the lessons you've learned and using them to propel yourself toward your goals. Here's an exercise for you. The next time you fail, write it down. Write down what happened, how it made you feel, and most importantly, what you learned from it. This act of reflection can be incredibly powerful. It turns failure from an emotional experience into an intellectual one, making it easier to process and grow from. Remember, failure is not your enemy. It's your ally. It's the voice whispering, "Try again. You can do better. You're stronger than you think." And let me tell you something else. Failure isn't permanent. It's a moment in time, a single chapter in the book of your life. And just like any chapter, it can end, and a new one can begin. So the next time you find yourself face to face with failure, don't shy away. Don't let it intimidate you. Instead, welcome it, embrace it, learn from it, and then rise above it. Because here's the truth. The strongest people aren't the ones who've never faced failure. They're the ones who faced it time and time again and refused to let it win. Failure is universal. Everyone, from the most successful entrepreneur to the humble artist, has felt its sting. But here's something you might not have considered. Failure connects us. It's a shared experience, a thread that ties humanity together. When we fail, we're not alone. Millions of others have stood where we're standing, feeling the same shame, regret, or anger. And many of them have used those feelings to rise stronger. Take Thomas Edison, for instance. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Imagine the persistence required to try 10,000 times and still not give up. Edison didn't see failure as a barrier. He saw it as a guide. Each failure brought him one step closer to success. Ask yourself, what would happen if you adopted that mindset? What if you saw failure not as a full stop, but as a comma? A pause before the next part of your story. Let me share something personal. A few years ago, I applied for a job I wanted more than anything. I prepared relentlessly, convinced myself I was the perfect fit, and gave it everything I had during the interview. When I didn't get the job, I was devastated. I felt like I wasn't good enough, like I had let myself down. But over time, I realized something. That rejection wasn't the end. It was a redirection. It forced me to reevaluate my goals, to sharpen my skills, to explore opportunities I'd never considered before. Looking back, that failure was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Here's the thing. Failure forces us to confront our vulnerabilities. It holds up a mirror and asks us to look closely. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens when we're pushed, when we're tested, when we're forced to adapt. Let's talk about emotional connections. Failure triggers a spectrum of emotions: shame, guilt, frustration, even anger. These emotions, while painful, are powerful. They're motivators. Think about a time when you were so angry about a failure that it pushed you to prove everyone wrong. That fire in your belly, that's your fuel. Here's another story. When J.K. Rowling was writing Harry Potter, she faced rejection after rejection. Publishers told her no over and over again. She was a single mother, struggling to make ends meet, and the constant rejection could have broken her spirit. But instead of giving up, she kept going. Why? Because she believed in her story. And eventually the world did too. What's the takeaway here? Believe in yourself, even when no one else does. Failure is not the absence of talent or potential. Often it's a sign that the world isn't ready for you yet, or that you're not quite ready for the world. So, how do we turn failure into strength? 1. Reframe failure. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" This simple shift in perspective turns failure into an opportunity. 2. Set measurable goals. Break your larger goals into smaller, manageable steps. If you fail at one step, you can regroup and try again without feeling overwhelmed. 3. Create a failure log. Keep a journal of your failures and what you learned from them. Writing it down helps you process your emotions and identify patterns in your setbacks. 4. Celebrate small wins. After every failure, find something positive to celebrate, no matter how small. It could be the effort you put in, the lessons you learned, or the courage it took to try. 5. Surround yourself with resilience. Seek out stories, mentors, and communities that inspire resilience. Knowing that others have overcome failures can give you the strength to face your own. Now let's dig into another emotional layer: the fear of failure. Fear is often more paralyzing than failure itself. It whispers, "What if you're not good enough? What if you try and fail again?" But here's the truth. The fear of failure is rooted in a desire for perfection, a desire to protect ourselves far. Fear is often more paralyzing than failure itself. It whispers, "What if you're not good enough? What if you try and fail again?" But here's the truth. The fear of failure is rooted in a desire for perfection, a desire to protect ourselves from judgment, disappointment, or loss. Imagine if babies were afraid of falling while learning to walk. They'd never take that first step. Falling is inevitable, but so is getting up. Ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen if I fail? Will it hurt my pride, my confidence, my finances? Once you identify the fear, you can start dismantling it. Here's another story. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, once said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Failure isn't an indictment of your abilities. It's evidence of your effort. It's proof that you're in the arena, fighting, striving, growing. So let's make a promise. The next time failure visits, we won't see it as an enemy. We'll greet it like an old friend, one who's here to challenge us, to teach us, to make us better. But failure, as I was saying, isn't just a visitor. It's a teacher. And like any good teacher, it demands your attention. It asks you to sit with it, to analyze it, to understand what went wrong and why. The lesson only ends when you take that knowledge and apply it to your future endeavors. Do you remember the last time failure taught you something invaluable? Maybe it was the realization that you'd been holding yourself back, that fear or hesitation had kept you from truly committing to your goals. Or perhaps it was more practical, a mistake at work that forced you to develop new skills or approach a problem differently. Whatever the case, failure is rarely a dead end. It's more like a detour, taking you down an unexpected road that often leads to a better destination. Let me ask you this. Have you ever failed so spectacularly that you thought you'd never recover? How did that feel? And yet, here you are, reading this, breathing, living proof that failure didn't destroy you. That's resilience in action, even if you didn't realize it at the time. Here's another story to ponder. Oprah Winfrey, a global icon, was once told she wasn't fit for television. Imagine that. A woman who would go on to build an empire based on her authenticity and charisma, being dismissed in her early career. She could have let that failure define her, but instead she used it as fuel. She took that rejection and turned it into one of the most inspiring success stories of our time. So, what's holding you back from doing the same? Is it the fear of judgment? The weight of expectations? Let me tell you something. Those who judge you, those who set impossible standards, they've failed too. they just don't talk about it. Failure is a universal experience, but how we respond to it sets us apart. Imagine your failures as battle scars. Each one tells a story of a challenge faced, a lesson learned, a moment endured. They're not marks of shame. They're badges of honor. And when you look at them that way, you realize that every scar, every mistake, every stumble is a testament to your courage. Now let's talk about actionable ways to use these scars as stepping stones. 1. Embrace the pain. The pain of failure is real, and it's okay to feel it. But don't let it consume you. Instead, use it as a signal, a reminder that this moment, as tough as it is, will pass. 2. Ask better questions. Instead of why me, ask what's next, or how can I grow from this? Better questions lead to better answers, and better answers lead to better outcomes. 3. Celebrate resilience. Each time you bounce back, celebrate it. Even if the comeback is small, it's still progress, and progress deserves recognition. 4. Redefine success. Sometimes we fail because we're chasing someone else's definition of success. Take a step back and ask yourself, what does success mean to me? Is it wealth, recognition, happiness, impact? Once you define it, you can work toward it with clarity. Here's a question for you. What if you stopped fearing failure and started embracing it? What if you saw each setback as an opportunity to rewrite your story, to prove to yourself that you're stronger, smarter, and more determined than you realized? Think about the phoenix, a creature that rises from its own ashes, reborn, stronger and more magnificent than before. That's what failure can do for you. It can burn away the old, the weak, the unprepared, and leave you with something extraordinary. One last story to leave you with. When Colonel Harlan Sanders, the founder of KFC, started his business, he was rejected over 1,000 times before someone finally agreed to his chicken recipe. Imagine hearing no that many times. Most people would have given up after 10, 50, or 100 rejections. But Sanders kept going because he believed in what he was offering. That belief turned his failure into global success. So, what will you do with your failures? Will you let them define you, or will you let them refine you? Will you see them as obstacles or as opportunities? The choice is yours, and it's a choice you make every day. Failure, my friend, isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one where you are the hero who rises, who overcomes, who triumphs. And here's the best part. Your next chapter is unwritten. You hold the pen. So, what will you write? Let's keep building, diving deeper into how to turn setbacks into stepping stones, and exploring the emotional and practical layers of resilience. Let me know where you'd like to go next.